Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is a cinephile who, if he's not popping up around Orlando doing pop-up movies, he's hosting an uncomfortable brunch with delicious food and unsettling cinema. Please welcome Josh Martin. What's going on, man?
Not much. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I'm glad. Thank you so much for spending a lunch break with me. I really appreciate it. What's your go-to lunch or sandwich?
Oh, man. Well, I work downtown primarily. Lunch is generally going to come from somewhere downtown. So my go-tos are going to be either Napasorn, Neighborhood Eatery, which is a great Korean place. But really, sandwich-wise, Champs, man. I love Champs. Owned by a little old couple. It's right across from the library. They must have rent control or own the building. It's still, you can get a full sandwich and chips and a drink for like $8. It's awesome.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of them.
That's awesome. What about if you don't have a sandwich? What do you usually get? Because I know you said neighborhood.
Neighborhood Eatery. That was a place that for years I was convinced was just a normal cafe. It's actually a Korean takeout joint that's owned by two brothers, and their old man, would deliver for us. So yeah, their bulgogi and all that kind of stuff is just outstanding.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I love that idea. Since I know we're going to talk movies, I'm just kind of curious because obviously, you know, and there'll be a few things, but one of the things I kind of first wanted to ask was, like, do you have what are your top 3 favorite movies? And I know that's a very loaded question. So, and I know there's different genres of areas that you can go, like, but I'm just kind of curious, since I'm asking the question of food, what's your go-to? I figure, like, what's your go-to, like, movie, like, you know, top 3 movies that you usually will either like watch again or whatever, you know, that you kind of like love and you watch again over and over again.
Sure. I always get this question and it's impossible to answer,
Yeah.
frankly. So I've kind of come up with a system where I can say, like, these were really important to me and informed me moving forward with, I don't know, what I love doing. Easy, obvious one. I was 8 years old the summer that Jurassic Park came out, and it was the perfect age. It is a masterpiece in every way. I don't care how trite people think that popcorn flicks are. That movie is perfect. I would say one of the first B movies that I ever really got my hands on was I watched Reanimator. And actually, there's a whole story. I actually watched it with my mother accidentally. If you ever seen it, you don't want to watch it with your mother. It came in the mail and she's like, "Oh, I saw that with your dad when it came out in theaters." And I was like, "Oh, huh, you want to watch it?" She's like, "Yeah." And then there's a scene where a severed head performs cunnilingus on a woman, and it's not great when you're 15, but it was awesome. And I've seen that movie more times than I can count. And then there's kind of an oddball one that I don't even think that it's necessarily my favorite movie. I have a really great memory associated with it. Is from 1996 to 2000, my stepmother was getting her PhD in Gainesville at UF, and so my father and her would split their time, and they had a house in Clearwater still, and he obviously had me. So, but I would go up there periodically, and I remember being in Gainesville at their crappy little apartment, and he took me to Blockbuster to get whatever I wanted, and for whatever reason, I saw this movie called Living in Oblivion. It has Steve Buscemi in it, and it's about a low-budget film being made and everything going wrong. There's no reason for a 12, 13-year-old to even get the humor, and I'm sure I didn't. I'm sure I was faking it to seem more important than I am or something. But that was the first time I ever saw filmmaking as, like, not the super glamorous thing, and the humor behind it. So it stuck with me forever, and so it's still one of my favorite movies. Objectively, it's not even the director's best film, but I do love it a lot.
All right. So, and we're obviously going to talk about all the things that you do with movies, but my last question that I have, the general type question, is where did that love come from? And what is it that you love about?
Well, I think that there's a couple reasons. I'm an only child, and everyone in my family was married and divorced a million times over, so I never had a babysitter. I was just passed around to adults all the time. It was fine, but they never talked to me like a child, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
They actually never really praised me all that much either. It was just like, you're just in the room like another adult. I remember the 92 debate between Perot, Bush Sr., and Clinton is beyond me, but it's just because the news was on. So that just kind of sets up that was the dynamic that I had with most of the family members. So I went to school, and my grandmother would pick me up on Friday afternoons, and my father would pick me up from her house on Saturday morning. So every Friday night, she would take me to the movies. More often than not, it was to the movies she wanted to see. So I saw some age-inappropriate movies for sure, but it wasn't like, a 12-year-old sneaking into American Pie. I was watching Air Force One, which isn't, that's not inappropriate, but why would I want it? But again, A Few Good Men was one of my favorite movies when I was a child. So I think that just had a lot to do with it. It was just that I was around so many adults, and it was a way to see the world outside of what I had. I was also raised in a very strict Christian house, and my hobbies were not. I mean, my mom was cool about it for the most part. My dad is even more amazing. He was not part of that at all. He was very open about what I could see. I don't know. So there was a bit of rebellion there without actually hurting anyone, and I think that was some of it too. And I could always be a jackass and argue it away as being something, again, because I wasn't trying to sneak softcore pornography on Cinemax at 2 a.m. I was recording Blue Velvet because I was an asshole who read that I should watch this. And 12 years old is a terrible age to watch that, by the way. Do not let your 12-year-old watch Blue Velvet.
I love that. So in 2014, and obviously you can kind of give me a rewind, but I figure we'll kind of talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Uncomfortable Brunch. So like you officially, I guess in 2014, and I'll put it in quotes because I know you kind of did like iterations of this, but you officially founded Uncomfortable Brunch, and it's like a film series. And I'll just kind of give you, you're obviously going to give me your version of it, but I know it's a film series dedicated to screening cinema that challenges, I love the way you describe it, challenges, disturbs, and provokes discussion. But at the same time, you're enjoying mimosas and breakfast tacos. So I want to talk a little bit about like where did this idea come from? Give me the origin story of how this came about, and then also paint the picture of, as we're doing this, talking during this lunch break about like what can people expect if they were to come to an uncomfortable brunch. What can they expect to experience from where you started to like what it is now?
Well, I can tell you that it's better now than when it started. Well, the first one was the first time that this idea came about was a complete accident. Alex Cooper used to be at Park Ave CDs, ran Smart
I've
Film
heard of
Records,
him,
all right
yes.
stuff. Okay, he and I have known each other for quite a while, and in 2011, he happened to just be by my house, and it was after a Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble, and I had a copy of this film called In the Realm of the Senses on Blu-ray sitting on my coffee table, unopened. It had been there for like a week. And he was like, "Oh, I read about that movie in some film class. I heard it's kind of graphic, but I've heard it's really good." And I said, "Yeah, I've never seen it either, but yeah, it's supposed to be kind of graphic and upsetting, but I don't know. It premiered at Cannes, so it can't be that pornographic, right?" Well, we scheduled, and the only time that we could get together was it was like a Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. or something. And so as a joke, he brought stuff to make mimosas and blueberry pancakes. And so he just thought it was funny. And then we start the movie not realizing exactly how graphic it was. None of the sex in it is simulated. And it ends very, very violently. But about halfway through, Alex looks at me. He's like, "I don't know. This like, uncomfortable brunch thing could be a thing." And shortly thereafter, I moved to Texas and spent a little time in LA, and because of some family stuff, required me to come back to Florida. And Alex Cooper, Tierney Tuff, and I were roommates in Audubon Park. And I was leaving NZ, and I'd gone back. And I was kind of want to keep a toe in the water, but wasn't really sure how to do it. And so Alex and I thought it'd be funny. Well, let's just do it. Let's just do it in the living room. And he helped put it on once, literally 1 month, and now to this day, he still tells people that I should thank him for creating the series. He's very sweet. He doesn't mean it, but he makes sure to, he came out to the 10th anniversary and shook my hand. He's like, "You're welcome." So that was really the origin of it. It was a bad joke that we thought it would fizzle out. 6 months in, all my movie nerd friends, they're not going to want to roll out of bed to come and watch Pasolini on Saturday morning with me, and do a potluck. But that ended up not being true. Got too big for the living room pretty quick. I was pretty close with Caitlin McGavick, who is Will Walker's ex, and she'd put together the menu for Little Indies and many other places. But she and Will were still together at the time and said, "Hey, why don't you give Will a call and see if he'd be willing to let you use the space?" And Will Walker, being how Will Walker is, amazing, said, "Yeah, I'll give you a bartender. You put someone on the door. You keep the door. We'll call it even." And pretty much his attitude was, "I don't have to do anything though, right?" And I said, "No, we'll do all the work." And it was awesome. And that was our home for 5 years. And ironically, that's when Enzian asked us if we'd be interested in coming on board. And we're the first and only program of theirs that is not theirs. Everything else has been a brainchild of their own, and they own the rights to it. Uncomfortable Brunch is still, Kat Winokur and I retain the rights to it. So it's a good situation.
What can they expect? So obviously, like, what can they expect? Like, for, I know I was like looking on the Enzion page, and they were talking about, like, there's obviously a cost to go in for the movie and for brunch. But what, if I were to, like, if I like, let's say someone listening to this and they're like, oh, I kind of want to do this. Is it just like random? You're just you're kind of sitting at the theater, so you're just kind of like with some brunch, or how's it all kind of work out?
It's like any normal movie at Enzian, where you would purchase a ticket. If you have a membership, you can reserve a table. If you don't, it's open seating, tiered levels. So it's there is table service inside the cinema, and they do have a special brunch menu that they put together just for the series. That's it, and so it's an a la carte brunch menu. That's something that differs from the Wills days. I mean, I don't know how we got away with it. Every health code violation you can think of. We would prep the food and make it in my kitchen, bring it in chafing dishes, and then had volunteers serve it in the back of Will's Pub. Like, so not okay. But again, it was fun. There was a whole DIY thing to it, so it's not nearly as punk as it used to be. But it's great. And I will say, Enzian is really, really great about not censoring our programming. They've made it very clear. I mean, they'll put warnings on it from sometimes that's like 18 and up only. However, I've never been shut down for something I want to do unless it was a licensing issue. It was never a content issue. So that is one thing I can tell people, though, is that I'm not out to dupe anybody into seeing something that's going to truly upset them. That's not, I think that's really cruel and uncool I think that there's some people out there, programmers especially, who kind of get a kick out of offending people. I don't like that at all. So we put trigger warnings on our website. We make sure, let people know, without ruining the movie. And also, if you're on the fence, you can always direct message us or just look up the Wikipedia article on it or something. It gives you a good idea, because there's a world of difference between coming and seeing Pink Flamingos, which is in a couple weeks. This John Waters classic that, sure, it's super gross and over the top, but then we've also shown him Irreversible as a French movie that has a 9-minute rape scene in it. And I would never want somebody to, yeah, I know. So I wouldn't want anybody to stumble into that where they, there's different types of movies we show for different types of reasons. And so that's one thing I like to always reiterate is, if you're on the fence, do some research, but it's always in good fun for the most part. The movies aren't funny. I think that me watching the audience eat eggs while watching this horrible stuff is funny. So it's just a big scheme for me to be able to laugh at people, more or less.
I mean, and I'm assuming it also gives you kind of like, there is that level probably of nervousness or uncomfortability. Obviously, you're uncomfortable, and it's seeing how people react to that uncomfortableness while you're all watching something, and then seeing, and then how do people react to it, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's either the oxygen is sucked out of the room and then you could hear a pin drop, or somebody awkwardly laughs and then a bunch of people do at a really inopportune moment. It's like really unsettling. They're like, they think there's laughter during it, but it's a human response. It's totally cool. I mean, it's not like, I don't think anybody's actually getting off on it or anything. It's like,
Yeah.
You got to release that tension
Yeah.
in a room like that, and we're really lucky with Enzian because it's a 200-seat room, and it's pretty rare that we have under 130, 150 people. So it's always, and luckily it's been going on so long now that people kind of get it. They know what they're coming into, or their friends are bringing them, so they're kind of prepped for it. But I just want everyone to know that it is meant to be fun. It is meant to be something that we enjoy ourselves, and even leaving the theater being upset, being like, man, that I have been reamed by a man who was very upset, thinking that we were lowering the quality of the programming at Enzian, which is ironic because it was a movie called Funny Games that Michael Haneke directed that was played like 2 weeks of regular programming in 1997 when it at Enzian when it played originally. I mean, he's one of the most respected international directors. So, but you know what? The movie was designed to piss the audience off. It was. I mean, there is no wish fulfillment.
Sorry
so,
about
that. You're all good. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, when I say discussion, I know that there's some really cool cats in town. There's a guy named David Whitver that does a series called Cinnabar, and they're great. They do a thing where they if you go so many X amount of times, you can pick a movie to host, but you also have to moderate the discussion afterwards. I love what they're doing. I personally never want to participate. I want, like, my kind of thing is like tend to be 150 words, yes or no. That's the most deconstruction I want on it. I want it, but after that, I'll be talking about culturally how it matters or what did it make us feel in these sorts of ways. But like nitpicking a narrative, it doesn't have a lot of interest. It doesn't hold a lot of interest for me personally. So I think the movies speak for themselves, kind of.
So how do you and Kat work on figuring out like your programming, like your movies, and figuring out what movie you're gonna do? Is there like a rhyme? I mean, I'm assuming there's a rhyme or reason or some kind of thought process on some of these basic, maybe availability, things like that, rights to them. So I'm always kind of curious, like how you kind of figure that part out.
Well, it was a lot of trial and error of figuring out how to do this, and she came on board in 2017. I said from the very beginning, in well, 2015 really was. It started in 2014, but 2015 was when it was a thing. And I always maintained that I didn't want it just to be the Josh Martin Film Festival. I didn't want it just to be stuff I liked. And so I programmed some things that weren't necessarily my favorite. Were like Clockwork Orange is a great example. Sold out, great film, people love it. Personally, it's just not. I'm just not a big fan of it. But when she came on board, it really pulled that together. Where it was like, no, okay, I finally have a great counterpoint, a voice that is different in a lot of ways. So what we start with is there are three types of movies that we show, as far as I'm concerned. Sorry, there's a fly kill it after me. There's three types of movies that we try to show. Either it's something that's upsetting, like upsetting, something that is like in a shocking sort of way, maybe, devastatingly sad, like, and then skewed more towards comedy, which generally is just as sad and upsetting as the other ones. There's just a little bit of levity in there, like happiness or pink flamingos, things like that. So that's usually the starting point. Is we're like, okay, we have these categories, and we have a running list. Obviously, we're just watching. I mean, it's like any other hobby that anybody has. Everything we're watching is somewhere in the back of our head. Is like, just flag that, and we'll text each other, hey, check that movie out when you have a second, or whatever. So we have a long running list, and we start to plug it in based on that. But then also we want to incorporate. We won't want 4 movies in a row that were all made between 1994 and 1998 or something. Want to break that up. And I've never been a big fan, and this is going to make me sound like some libertarian, and I do have a better answer for this, why I feel this way. But there's a lot of programmers that they'll institute quotas to make sure they're hitting X amount of black filmmakers, women filmmakers, etc. I think that it's the heart is in the right place there, but it really comes down to getting programmers that have that diversity, not white programmers trying to just hit a number. I don't have a lot of patience with that. So there are a lot of folks in town that also are kind of incorporate ideas and that sort of thing. That said, though, we will talk internally about we need to have another woman filmmaker. It just we have too many in a row, especially if they were like really shitty men. If we do Lars von Trier and Vincent Gallo and it's like we need to get some Kelly Reichardt in there to balance it out. So it's something we're constantly thinking about, but we're also not trying to be so rigid that it limits what the program can be and how it can, because there are films that are made by that might not fall into that demographic that still accomplish that goal in some ways. But like we showed Bamboozled years ago, Spike Lee satire. It's a play on the producers. Damon Wayans plays an executive that wants to get fired. Yeah, and so he creates a new variety show with black actors in blackface, thinking it's so offensive that he'll get fired. And it ends up everybody thinks it's brilliant social commentary and blah, blah, blah. It's really funny. But I've been kicking around the idea for years, and I was like, I can't go on stage and talk about the satire of Spike Lee. It's just so inappropriate. And I was at Stardust with my buddy Nigel John, and he starts laughing, and he's like, I'll go and intro it. It was just to be respectful to that stuff. But when I saw that it could be a tool for that, I was like, this is kind of great. And we don't want to be too preachy. We don't want to get on a soapbox all the time. But occasionally, I think there is value in that if it's presented in the right way.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's so true. And I'm trying, especially with some of those movies, I think it's great. Has there been like, can you recall like what's been one of the most awkward, uncomfortable brunches, like movies that you've done during brunch that you were like it just did not, like it was just like it was uncomfortable for everyone?
I do. Maybe, yeah, there's one that was, I think it's one time we maybe like kind of crossed a line. I still think it's funny. It's some of the best press we ever got. We planned for 10 months. Sorry. When Katie came on board, we planned this that we wanted to do for February of 2018. We wanted to do a triple feature that was 2 feature-length films and a short that were all documentaries about bestiality. And for Valentine's Day, we had a vegan menu. It was cool. And they were serious films, for the most part. One is a short that ran the film festival circuit in 2016, 2017, I think, called Dolphin Lover, about a gentleman who worked at a knockoff SeaWorld in Sarasota and had a long-running sexual relationship with a dolphin. And it's awful. I mean, nobody's going to say that should be done. But what's really screwed up is that when he got fired, the dolphin swam to the bottom of the tank and killed itself.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah, it's just absolutely wild story. And then we showed a feature-length documentary called Zoo about a gentleman who was dropped off outside of an ER and his friends took off and nobody knew why, and he was dying of internal hemorrhaging. And they were a club that would, in the middle of the night, go to stables and engage with horses. Horses, yeah. And then the one that was a really, really tough find. It was submitted to the Florida Film Festival and rejected. It was briefly bought by Vice Films, but then dropped. It was called Donkey Love. It's about a rite of passage that happens in rural areas of Colombia where fathers will teach their children, their sons, how to engage in intercourse by using the donkeys. That I had to do some research because there is no penetration on screen. But it's happening. So I had to look and see what the exhibition laws against, if that would be considered pornography at that point.
Yeah.
Certainly animal cruelty. And it was really unsettling, the answer I found. It was actually legal. And it's in Florida, it's only a misdemeanor to have sex with an animal. A lot of states don't have any issue at all. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
So how did people react to that? Like, was that like a was it kind of like
yeah. It was stacked when it started. We nabbed him. The dolphin won us 15 minutes, and it's so funny and out there that it's like and well made that nobody was walking out of it. Zoo is like actually just a true crime documentary. It's not, and they don't harp on anything sexual. It's actually like, where did this guy come? What was the secret club, and why did they do? Like, what happened? The third one, people walked out. I mean, they were walking out kind of laughing because it wasn't, again, they knew what they were getting into. We're very open, but I think that some people thought that they wanted to see that, and in reality, they really didn't. And I say walkouts, we probably had at that point. I'd say the room was probably about 50 people, and by the end of it, it was down to about 30.
Yeah.
So, and that's also 3 movies. There's a lot of reasons.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of everything.
That was the one, though, I think.
That's the one testing the uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
Okay.
I crossed the line once in my house, and that was actually another time with documentary. We don't show documentaries very often because they're real, and it's hard to enjoy yourself even on, But I did show Academy Award nominated documentary about a priest that molested many, many children, a whole thing, directed by Amy Berg. She actually directed the new Jeff Buckley movie that's coming out in a few months. But I showed that on Easter. Yeah. My friends and I standing around and they're like, Josh, no more documentaries, man. You can't do that anymore.
Wow.
But that was the first year, so live and learn.
Okay. So besides doing Uncomfortable Brunch, one of the things I also said that you do a lot of pop-ups. So you do Orlando pop-up movie service all around town. I kind of wanted to get a little bit, I want to kind of hear the origin story of kind of how that kind of came about. I know you do pop-ups, I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, like the Nook. You guys you'll do some movies there. You'll do some stuff at a la carte and stuff like that as well. But you also do a little bit of variety. And I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about how that kind of started. And then kind of also the same idea of like how you guys come up with the movies and how all that comes about, because it's a very fun, you do a very fun, it's something very fun that you do. And I just think it's like it's just something that I think anyone would enjoy. Maybe right now in the summertime, not as much because it's so hot, but definitely something to do, in the fall and whatnot when it gets nice and cool out.
Yeah. Well, the way it actually happened is I had all this equipment that I bought to show movies at Will's Pub for brunch that was no longer being used as much. So I actually got a call from Mary McGinn, whom you know, that owns the Nook. When the Nook first opened, she was taking a shift or two a week at the milk district a la carte just to make ends meet. And the owners over there asked her, said, "Hey, what is the deal with this guy that I know that he does movies for you occasionally?" So I went and met with him, and that was for December of 2018. Was when I started with them, and that was every Monday. And they were my only client, so I still was not a proper business at that point. I didn't have an LLC or anything like that. But then the lockdown hit, and I lost all of my work. It was like all of it. So I actually went out to Clearwater, which I hadn't been home like that in a long time, outside of like going just for Christmas or whatever. But my father's been a land surveyor for 40 plus years, and he said, "Hey, I know you don't want to do this, but I can put you out in the middle of nowhere, and you'll you'll make decent money, and it'll suck, but it's better than not having it." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And so I went and stayed in my childhood bedroom 3 nights a week and land surveyed. But that whole time I was thinking, like, what am I going to do when this opens up, when I'm able to do this again? So I took the stimulus money that we had and put it into some new equipment, better projector, bigger screen, a bunch of other things, and really made a go of it. So starting at the end of 2020 was when that really formed, but then by 2021 I was hitting the ground running. And so a client like a la carte, they give me a list of what movies they want to show, and then we'll discuss if there's any alternatives that might make sense or whatever. But for the most part, I'm only working as a consultant at best, just to give them a little bit of help. But for the most part, they know what they want to show. They know their audience better than I do. Well, maybe not anymore, but I know their audience pretty well these days. But that's usually how that'll go, and that'll happen with a lot of clients that want to just hire me outright. And I try to make it fun still. And, if I'm able to put any kind of pre-show material, like around Christmas time, I will always show, How the Grinch Stole Christmas before a feature, just because, 25 minutes beforehand, I just think it's fun, and everybody seems to like it. But then something like the Nook on Robinson, they give me free reign. I was kicking around ideas for about a year and a half where I was doing double features that I just thought were funny, like Weekend at Bernie's 1 and 2. Twins and Junior, just barely held together, but I thought it was funny, but it never really worked. It didn't gel. And then it just hit me. I was like, it's really a trite, overdone idea, but you can have a lot of fun with it just doing a bad movie night. And so we ran with it. And the first couple of years we did the hits. Everybody knows, Batman and Robin, Showgirls, The Room, Mac and Me, all those kinds of flicks, have a little bit of name recognition, and it was awesome. There was like a lot of folks that just became regulars, and they actually really kind of trust the programming now. So now I'm showing some really wild stuff that nobody's ever heard of, and it gets a really good response. It's a lot of fun. I'm probably proudest of Uncomfortable Brunch, but I will say Movie Trash at the Nook is absolutely my favorite thing that I do. I think it's so much fun. Even a few months ago, I was able to show a film called Hawk Jones. It's a crime drama set in San Francisco, I believe. It's not kid inappropriate, but there's violence in it. It's a PG-13 crime film, but the entire cast is under the age of 13, and they never address why. And it's not for kids. Oh, it's all shot on VHS. And you know what? I had like 30 people show up, and everyone loved it, because like, who would have ever thought of that? But yeah, so like I said, that's I get the most out of it, I think.
No, I think that I love it. I saw it when I was going through your Instagram and looking, and I was like, oh my gosh, he did one. I think one of them was like an old Captain America movie, is one of the ones I saw on there. And I was just like, and every time I see when Mary posts on like on the Nook and I see the movies, I was like, man, I'm like, I wish I was either closer or I wish I was free so I can come watch some of these, just because I'm like, it's just a good time to be able to, sit back, crack open a beer, have a beverage, and watch a crappy movie, watch trashy,
Well, what's cool too is I think the audience really kind of got it too, where, we're not sticklers. Everybody should be kind of laughing at what's going on, or at least laughing with it, I think. That's the thing too, is I really respect all of these movies, and I'm not trying to just, seem more self-important or whatever. I do. I think that these movies have a real important place in film history. And it's great because the crowd, they engage with the film. Sure, it's still a bar and they're talking and drinking, but nobody's having their own conversations in the middle of it, completely ignoring the movie. It's all about this insane thing that we're watching. And that's great for 90 minutes.
Heck yeah. No, I think it's super fun. I think it's a great concept. What do you do so when you're not doing stuff? I know you said you have other clients that do certain things. Is it one of those where you're like, you just pop up, like if it's like birthday parties or things like that, or just even like, hey, like another event or another bar or something like that. It's like, hey, we want to do a movie. Then you usually call you up, or is that how it usually kind of works?
Yeah, it's really not that dissimilar to how somebody would hire a DJ. So I have clients that are not regular, but I work with them at least 3 or 4 times a year. I get to do private. I've done some private screenings at what is it? In Ivanhoe Park. There's the food hall, and then there's the condos behind it. I
Yes,
can't remember.
the
Not the
yard, is that what
condos.
it's called? Like the
Yeah,
yard, or that area?
the yard. That's it. Yeah, they. I've done like screenings on their roof for their residents, like the pool area, and then I'm at GB Bottle Shop from time to time. I
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
just showed Jaws a couple days ago, and they're great. They're a newer client. I think the first screening I did with them was this past Christmas. They hired me to show Die Hard.
Nice.
Yeah, there are folks like that all over town, and then yeah, I also have been called from time to time just to do something in someone's backyard for a party, and I'm cool with it. I think it's great. At the end of the day, I think that a lot of what informed who I am was my experience growing up in cinemas, like actual theaters. And I'm not going to be this boomer who's saying that we have to hold on to something like that's just obsolete. But I do think it's still really important to engage with these with art with a crowd. I think that we're really losing something, and streaming is convenient, and I love it. I have that stuff. But if the only way we ever watch a movie is by ourselves when we can top pause it according to our schedule, we're missing something. And I think it's kind of sad. So I want to find fun ways to get people to engage with it again, because it's just really important to me. So yeah.
I love that. Josh, did you work even as like a child? Did you work in like movie theaters and stuff like that? I know obviously you went, like, do you have a long history of working in theaters, in movie theaters and cinema theaters?
Yeah, I learned how to do 35 millimeter projection when I was 16, because they still had that at the Seminole 8 movie theater in Seminole, just south of Clearwater. It's funny, I have zero friends from high school. I still have friends from that movie theater. I still visit my buddy Dan every Christmas, bring his kids presents. They call me Uncle Josh. It's really ridiculous, but yeah, so I have great memories of that, and it was a little privately owned place. It wasn't an AMC or a Regal or anything. It was an 8 screen, and somehow they just let a bunch of 16, 17-year olds run that place, and it was absurd. I mean, we were we used to save the bulbs that we would change out of the projector, and you had to wear a lead vest and a face covering because they went in straight in, and it wouldn't kill you, but it would be like a buckshot. It would hurt you if it were to explode. And so we saved those for like 6 months, and then in the middle of the night, climbed up to the roof, 30 feet up, and threw them into the dumpster like grenades. We're like, how was that okay? It wasn't. But again, we had no oversight. We were just a bunch of kids screwing around. So I don't know. I love that. But so yeah, that was how I definitely started then. And I went to film school brief. That's why I moved to Orlando. I did the Full Sail thing. And I realized pretty quick that I didn't like working on movies. I just wasn't a fan. I did obviously some production assistant work, but I was a script supervisor mostly. And I was just not into it. And a girlfriend at the time, her sister was the box office manager at Enzian, and they needed someone to run their volunteer program for the film festival that year. And it was a 6-month gig, and I was like, oh yeah, that'll get me time to clear my head, and I just never left. In some way or another, I've stayed at Enzian in some capacity, paid or unpaid. It's funny how life goes like that. I mean, I didn't need that degree, as it turns out, but I needed it to move to Orlando, so what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, and it's funny that you say that, because when I think of my childhood memories of jobs that I had, my two favorite jobs that I ever had, one was I was a camp counselor during summer camp up north, but my other one was when I moved to Florida and I didn't have that, I worked at a movie theater, and I worked at my parents lived in South Florida, and I worked in a little 20-plex. It was just like a little hole in the wall. It was like a Cobb, which then later on became, I guess, a Regal,
Yeah,
but it was I was part of that, and it's exactly what you said. It was like we had like one adult, and then the rest were all teenagers and or college kids, and we were all just kind of there to do things. And so it was just kind of, and then you're like, and we would just kind of, they were like friends. I still talk to a lot of them still, and like, even though I did a few summers, the weirdest thing that ever happened to me was they called a bomb threat during Titanic, and then so they had to clear out the theater. And then I think about it now, because it was weird, because my parents would never go to the theater, but for some strange reason, that was the day my parents went to the theater, and they evacuated everybody. But then they said, hey, we need like ushers and volunteers to come in with the police to kind of let us know what is there, shouldn't be there with like the bomb sniffing dogs. And I was like, oh, I'll go. And here I am walking in to the theater, doing this. But yeah, it was like some of my favorite memories. It's like it's just a good time. And I do agree with what you're saying in the sense of like there is something special about watching a movie, and sometimes obviously, and I love to hear your thoughts on it, because there is something special about doing that communal aspect of watching something together, which obviously you provide with the pop-ups and brunch, but at the same time being able to watch something and laugh and like, and it's amazing how like the atmosphere around you can make or break a movie. I sometimes think like sometimes you can watch a movie and the crowd just is not into it, but you love it and
Right.
you're like, oh, I'm like, why? I'm like, I love this movie, but I couldn't tell like no one's reacting the way I'm reacting,
Right. Right.
and things like that. So, but and I think it's true. I mean, I think it's like it's a lost thing. It's just same thing with like almost like I think anything watching communal, like whether it's sports or movies like that, like to be
Yeah.
able to do in a community atmosphere and in a group setting, there's just something magical about it when you're watching something that you're all into and you're all kind of, vibing off of it and just enjoying.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because that people would never equate throwing on a Blu-ray at home versus going to a cinema. I think a lot of people think it's the same thing, or at least have in their head that it feels the same way. But nobody would say that about putting on a record at home versus going to see a band perform live. And they're both great. They're both things that exist for reasons, and I think that they have a benefit. But if you never go see live music ever, you're missing out. You're just missing out on the experience of it. And I don't know. We're so disconnected as far just on a human basis anymore. The internet's been has brought us together in a lot of great ways, but I think that there is something about physically being in the same place that, and I mean, everybody went crazy during lockdown because of this. But you know what thrived? Going to drive-in movie theaters. For the first time, a drive-in movie theater in like however many decades had the number one film in the box office wise because they were the only one doing it, and it was a way for people to do it relatively safely. And so I think that it's not just the creation of the art that's important at being out there in the world. I think that how it's consumed has to be considered as well.
No, I agree with that. And I think it's very important to be able to, I actually just watched the whole thing, even though I just saw something on the news how like IMAX is like been their most successful year
Hmm.
as a business because of more movies being done via IMAX, because there are some movies like, and I don't know if there's like, out of curiosity, do you have like a guilty pleasure of like a genre of movies that are like, that you just kind of, you've always, that you're like, I'm a stickler for, like if it's coming on, I'm watching something having to do with either an actor, maybe like an actor, or a kind of like a genre or anything like that?
Well, and I know this is what you meant. I don't have guilty pleasures because I will not feel guilty about something that I like.
Amen. Amen.
But that said, some of my more academic friends do make fun of me. I am a huge fan of really bloated action movies. I mean, like, not just the good Michael Bay stuff. I mean, the Michael Bay ripoff stuff. I like Hurricane Heist. I like Cobra. All of it. I'm a big fan of it. And I think people come around to it. I think more people enjoy that stuff than they want to admit.
Oh yeah.
I mean, come on. Dwayne Johnson is one of the most charismatic people in the world. Don't pretend that The Rock isn't awesome. It's just true. So I think that that's probably the genre that people are maybe the most surprised. But I'm so unapologetic about it. And I always get a laugh like, really? You're going to see Rampage on opening weekend? I was like, damn right I am. I'm going to see a giant monkey smash some stuff. It's going to be awesome.
I mean, and that's really what it is. It's to be able to go to the movies. A lot of times I will go to a movie just to, I'm like, I'll be like, was I entertained? I'm like, I never looked at my watch to be like, oh, is it almost over?
Right.
Like,
That's a great indicator.
right?
The
Like,
watch.
yeah. Did I never looked at my watch? Was I entertained? Was I like, kind of like, was I into it? I'm like, then it's good. Like it does it did the job. That's what you want it to be.
Well, and that's the other thing too that I think that folks maybe don't put into the thought process of the whole thing is that action movies and horror movies are the reason that we have special effects that are put into more serious work. Do you think Saving Private Ryan would have been made if Evil Dead hadn't been around? I mean, they figured that stuff out, and there's always going to be violence, and some of there's always going to be whatever, but those lesser genres are the ones that bring that stuff to, I don't know, a level of professionalism that maybe wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I used to do, one of my buddies and I, we would during college, we would for New Year's, that would be our thing. Like we would just go to like a late show and do because we're like, we're not gonna, let's just watch a movie during New Year. So we would like
Yeah,
usually go
right.
do something like that, and it was always fun. I always had a blast with that. I absolutely love the idea that you're kind of creating that community, but also spreading, sharing something that everyone could either like that's the whole idea, like bringing people together.
Well, that's. Oh, I was just gonna interject. Know that that my old buddy Alex Cooper mentioned this to me. I think I can't remember why exactly. Doesn't matter. But he made it real clear. It's like, no, it's not. You're not just creating community. You have to be in it. You have to be part of it. And I want to be part of it. And I hope that that's it's not just being a tastemaker or something. It's that's silly and ego. I think though. So I want to create things that I would go to.
Yeah. No, I love that. What else? Like speaking of the idea of, because I know you said you worked on some film festivals and things like that. I'm always, I love small businesses and small and people that are creating and doing things. Is there anyone that you've come across up and coming, or anything that's like Orlando projects that have, and obviously I know that filming is not we used to have some kind of like
Mhm.
where it became very popular where you could actually, well, I guess tax assisted in the sense of, where it was like provided areas, and they kind of took that away, which has made it for less movies. But are there any up and coming or anything like that? Any like Orlando folks that you've seen that are filmmakers, or projects that you've seen that come across that people should know about, or even like small independent brand, or type of films that you've seen that you're like, man, this is really well done type of thing that should be, more people should know about it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's a series that I have a small hand in that I didn't even start it. They called me and asked if I would consult on some of it. But Binks, the record store and coffee shop down off of Church in downtown, there's a young lady who, not sure what her position is exactly there, but she's been doing a lot of event management. Elena's her name. She came to me because she put together a little local film festival last year, 1 day thing of shorts, and she got quite a few submissions, all things for doing it on her own and having never worked at a film festival. So she hit me up about doing a series, and we're doing this thing called Cryptic Cinema. That we don't announce the title. We give a clue that's a record that could or could not be directly related to the movie. It might just be in tone. And then they're also having a cocktail or a drink that they have that's named another clue. And that's the idea. It's kind of a fun engagement for way. But the thing that I really like about it is that we're going to start incorporating local short film makers. So that'll be part of the pre-show, and they'll be able to engage with the audience a little bit. And I find that putting in situations like that are great because film festivals are not workshops. And you need someone in between the two, I think, especially when you're a young filmmaker or not horribly experienced, to get people around you who are kind and who like what you're doing, and then they can, and not this there to just be a critique, but I think that's really, really beneficial for local filmmakers because I work on the other end of it where I'm selecting for. I mean, Florida Film Festival is an Oscar qualifying film festival. I can't screw around with, well, I just really like their spirit. It breaks my heart sometimes that my favorite things are just not that well made, but it happens. So I think that there should be an outlet for these things that are almost great or just need a little more work, or maybe not. Maybe they're perfect the way they are and they're just have an audience of 8 people. That's kind of cool too in its own way, as long as you can find those 8 people. So that's the one thing that I'm personally involved with locally that I like. And then of course there is the Central Florida Film Slam that takes place at Enzian each month, I believe, or it might be bi-monthly now. But that again is all local filmmakers, short film showcase. It's been through many iterations over the years, and ironically, it actually started at the DMAC in downtown in the Rogers Keeney building, where I am literally sitting right now. The upstairs gallery used to be a single screen cinema space, and that's where it was able to be picked up by Enzian at one point, and they fostered the program, put a lot of money and work into it, and it's really great now. So it's a way though to go and meet filmmakers and talk with them at a more realistic level about their work, not just, oh, I loved it so much.
Yeah,
Something a little deeper than that.
that's awesome, man. I love how you've immersed yourself in like on something that you love, but at the same time have been able to find a different, like different ways to be able to share it. So therefore you're kind of almost showing almost like the full spectrum of everything from, like everything from like trashy movies all the way up to like, like Florida Film Festival, where it's like it could be possibly up for awards and things like
Right.
that, which
Oh
I
yeah,
think.
I'm after we wrap, I'm going to show a Minecraft movie tonight at a la carte. So
Yes, I saw that. I
that's
saw that, which is great.
which I'm sure is going to be great. I haven't seen it yet.
I have not.
I
I
won't
have
be
not seen
prejudiced.
it either. But Jack Black, Mr. Jack Black's in it, so that's always a good thing. Few more questions for you. One is, what advice would you have for someone wanting to start something?
Don't. It's not worth it. I used to kind of get made fun of by some of my colleagues, especially in the film festival world, when I was starting to do these screenings and doing whatever projects. I would pretty much say yes to anything, as long as it wasn't with somebody that had burned me or something. But I was always willing to give the benefit of the doubt, because even if the project sucked and it failed, I was always able to walk away with something that I could implement in another area. And a lot of this has to do that I've juggled a million jobs my whole life. Like at any given point, like right now, the facilities and operations manager at City Arts, but I'm also running these programs, and it's just you need to know how to work on the fly and not rely on employees. I think if you get to a big enough place that you need them, that's great, But I do think it's really, really important that for someone with a small business, that they need to know how all of it works, and to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons too. Not if I just wanted to, frankly, because if I just wanted to show movies because I was like, oh, well, people love movies and I can make money on movies, I would be poor and watching movies I don't like. So, you find a way to be able to incorporate the stuff that you like into your field. And I think by having a small business, it gives you a little more freedom, even though it's way harder to keep it going or even get it off the ground. But it's so rewarding to be able to. So that's that. I don't know if that really answers your
Yeah, it
question, because
does.
I don't really have a formula, but I would say perseverance is really obvious. But just try. I'm not a positive person, so I'm never going to say just keep it positive and you're going to win. No, some situations just suck, but you can usually pull something constructive out of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
I mean, I will say, like you said, you get something out of each opportunity that you do, especially when you're saying yes. So I think that's awesome. Where can people follow you and they could support you? So obviously they'll be able to see a lot of this on the show notes, but I'm always like to be able to have, like, if they're listening and they're kind of scrolling through their phones, where can they follow you on social and be able to see all the different projects and different things, everything from Uncomfortable Brunch to Orlando Pop-Up Movie Service. Where else can they find you and see that, provide all that information?
Yeah, for Uncomfortable Brunch, there's uncomfortablebrunch.com that keeps the schedules updated. You can see the history of every film we've ever shown. All of that info is on there. And then as far as socials, we have Instagram and Facebook that are updated very regularly. So you'll always be able to see what's coming up there. We did expand to Tampa this year, so we're in both places, and we're not mirroring programming. It's similar themes, like we're showing two John Waters movies, so we'll have Pink Flamingos there, Female Trouble here. We're trying to do that. So if you want, it's really not a bad drive. It's just a little over an hour, and the theater's really super cool. So yeah, that's where I would say for Uncomfortable Brunch. And then OrlandoPopUpMovieServices.com is the same deal. I have a schedule on there of all of the movies that are licensed. Sometimes backyard movies are not going to be listed on there if they're private events, that sort of thing. But all the public events are going to be on there, and almost, if not all of them, are going to be free. I'll throw a tip jar out for Bad Movie Night, but I'm not doing that for the $20. I'm doing it because it's fun. But yeah, so and again, socials, Instagram and Facebook for that. Those are the best ways to go about following those anyway.
You also did an Uncomfortable Brunch recently, didn't you, in Miami as well?
Yeah, it was really great. We got invited down by the Miami Film Festival. The programming director over there is friendly with the programming director for Florida Film Festival, and we got connected. And yeah, they wanted to do something, and it was the nicest hotel that Katie and I ever stayed in. It was really kind of a lot of fun to be treated like a celebrity for a minute. Yeah, we basically we mirrored a program that we did with Enzian where we showed Maggie Gyllenhaal's secretary.
Yeah.
So, but we were able to build into it more of a lecture at the front end, because I was actually able to find a way for it to work. I wasn't really sure, because that was actually one that I was never super into. Not that I don't love the movie, I think it's great, but it's just not that extreme. And I found, though, that the short story that it's based on is not consensual, and it's not a happy ending. And so we got to talk about that. Why in 2002 they had this movie that was sex positive, but still couldn't talk about workplace harassment and assault. It was really great. And I know I'm sounding like it was fun, and because it was it was be able to talk to these people in O Cinema, where we were at, and yeah, it was fun to be able to find an angle, and make talk about it in a way that it's not normally talked about.
Yeah. No, this is great. Josh, I really appreciate you for you coming on, taking some time to chat with me. That's our show for today. So thank you so much to Josh Martin of Uncomfortable Brunch, Orlando Pop-Up Movie Services. Thank you so much for coming on and being on. Make sure to check them out online. You'll see it all in the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe and tell your friends. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads, do some shopping. Obviously, sandwich selfies are always encouraged. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion.